Hey, how's it going everybody? Welcome back to Aussie Fish Keeping. So in today's video, we're going to be taking a look at 7 species of fish that you can keep in your aquarium to help keep your algae levels down. So a lot of the species on this list are sold as cleaner fish, and I think that it's definitely important to remember that they can obviously be kept in your aquarium to eat some of your waste or some of your algae. Although they are a whole separate fish in themselves and you do need to care for them, you can't just drop them in there and never feed them or never think about them again. They do require active care and feeding, but they are just super beneficial to have in your aquarium to help you keep your algae levels down. But yeah, I guess without any further ado, let's just jump straight into today's video. So as for the first algae-eating fish on our list, we have a nano species. We have sinkless catfish. So sinkless catfish are obviously quite a small species, and they do make the perfect addition to any nano aquarium. Obviously, not only are they a super peaceful little community fish, but they are also very good algae eaters. And they are very beneficial to keep in your aquarium if it is a really small size tank. So you'd be looking to keep these guys in something from around 20 to 40 liters, just because they do look quite small at first, although over time they can get quite large and they will need a larger sized aquarium. So the benefit of keeping these guys in a smaller sized tank is obviously just because they are a smaller fish, they can't eat nearly as much algae as larger fish can. So keeping them in a smaller tank, obviously they don't have to do as much feeding and grazing on the algae just because there's less of it. So these guys do like tropical water conditions, which is obviously prone to grow algae just because the water is generally a lot more warmer and that just promotes the growth a lot more. But yeah, they do like to be kept in a heated tank and, like I said before, with tropical water parameters. And it is important to maintain these parameters just because these guys can be a little bit fickle, and if you do want them to eat the most amount of algae that they can, you want them to be nice and healthy. So yeah, it's just important to maintain those parameters. But yeah, I definitely think sinkless catfish are a great little algae eating fish, especially for nano-sized aquariums, and I would highly recommend them. So moving on to the next fish on our list, we actually don't have a fish, we have cherry shrimp. So a lot of people don't actually know that cherry shrimp are really good algae eaters, and I think the main reason is because they keep them in larger sized aquariums. So if you do keep these guys in an aquarium of around 20 liters or less, you will notice that they do actually eat quite a lot of algae off the surfaces in your aquarium. So they won't really eat the algae off the glass in your aquarium, although if you do have rocks, plants and wood in there and that starts to grow algae, they will definitely eat that. So something really important to remember with these guys is they can be very fickle, and you do want to maintain relatively stable water parameters. And as well as that, you do want to make sure if you are keeping them with tank mates, obviously there's nothing that can hurt them. Just because if they are constantly trying to hide in your aquarium, they won't really eat as much algae as you want them to. So yeah, it's definitely just good to make sure you are keeping these guys with compatible tank mates. But besides that, I think the only other thing that a lot of people tend to forget sometimes is that you do actually need to separately feed these guys. So a lot of people who keep these in larger size community aquariums do think that you can just chuck them in there and they can survive solely off the microorganisms and broken down food that's in the water column. Although if you do want nice, healthy, colorful shrimp, it's definitely important to remember you do have to feed these guys a nice high protein and nutrient rich diet. And as well as that, I would highly recommend throwing in things like dried mulberry leaves or dried Indian almond leaves, just because these sorts of botanicals develop a small layer of biofilm, which is also super beneficial for your shrimp to eat. But yeah, besides that, I definitely think cherry shrimp are another great addition to a nano aquarium if you are looking for an algae eating fish. So moving on to the next fish on our list, we have a little bit of a more unique and exotic fish. We have Borneo suckers. So Borneo suckers are a really cool little fish, and I think they look a lot like hill stream loaches, which obviously sort of resemble a mini stingray. So they do definitely make a great little unique addition to your tropical aquarium. But as well as that, they do eat small amounts of algae on the glass of your aquarium and obviously on smooth surfaces. So they definitely aren't the best at eating algae, although they definitely do a great job when it comes to spot cleaning algae. So when you first get these guys, if you scrape down the surface of your glass and get it nice and clean, they should keep it like that, just because every time algae starts to develop, they'll just eat the really small patches of it. But as well as that, you do want to make sure you are feeding these guys an algae wafer as well, just to supplement their diet. So as for water parameters, you want to keep them in a heated aquarium with tropical water conditions, just to resolve in the healthiest fish you can possibly get. But yeah, besides all that, I definitely think hillstream loaches are another great addition to a nano to medium sized aquarium if you are looking for an algae eating fish. So moving on to the next fish on our list, we have probably one of the most common algae eating fish in the aquarium hobby. We have Siamese algae eaters. So Siamese algae eaters are quite a large fish, and you definitely do need a larger sized aquarium for these guys. So they won't really eat the surface algae that grows on your glass and on the surface of your ornaments or rocks in your aquarium. But most of the time they will eat things like hair algae or blackbeard algae. So these guys are super hardy fish, and they do generally prefer the tropical water parameters, although like I said, they are very hardy and they can withstand quite large fluctuations. So it definitely makes them a super easy fish to care for. And as long as you're supplementing their diet with a nice high protein and nutrient rich food, you should find that these guys stay nice and healthy and eat all of the algae in your aquarium. So as well as that, there isn't a lot of things that you can't keep these guys with. Obviously, being a sucking mouth catfish, they are a very peaceful little fish, and you just want to make sure you aren't keeping them with any small nippy fish or any really large aggressive fish. But as long as you keep those things in mind, I definitely think Siamese algae eaters are great little algae eating fish that you can get for your aquarium. So moving on to the next fish on our list, we have one that's most commonly kept by beginners just because they want a nice, easy, cleaner fish. We have sucking catfish. So I didn't actually think this was their name, and I did do quite a lot of research on it, and I couldn't actually find their proper name. But a lot of sources seem to refer to them as sucking catfish. So these guys are those little gold or blotch colored catfish that you get at any pet store. So I believe these guys do originate from China, and they are kept in quite cold water conditions. So that makes them very easy to keep for beginners, and obviously it makes their water parameters super easy to maintain. So these guys are very versatile, and they will eat quite a number of different types of algae, although I think they are most notable at eating the surface algae. So much like all the other fish on this list, you do want to make sure you keep them with compatible tank mates, and you also want to make sure you are supplementing their diet with some sort of nutrient-rich pellet, and even something like zucchini or green beans every now and then. But yeah, these guys are a very peaceful community fish, and they do make a great algae eater for a community setup. So as well as this, these guys do get a little bit on the larger size. I would say somewhere from around 7 to 10 centimeters. So you do want to keep them in something around 50 liters up. Just because once they do grow, you do want to have them in a nice volume of water. But yeah, as long as you keep these guys nice and healthy and with compatible tank mates, I definitely think they do make another great addition for an algae eater in your aquarium. Moving on to the next fish on our list, we have a super cool and unique fish. We have Whiptail catfish. So whiptails aren't definitely the best algae eating fish that you can get, although they will definitely help when it comes to keeping the surface algae down. So in my experience, I've noticed that these guys generally want a more carnivorous diet, so they want things like brine shrimp or bloodworms, although they definitely do eat stuff like zucchini, green beans, algae wafers, and algae. But yeah, I definitely do think it is important, if you are keeping these guys, that you do mix up their diet every now and then and give them a variety of different things, from a carnivorous diet to a herbivorous diet. That will obviously just ensure you have the healthiest fish possible. So you definitely want to keep these guys in a heated aquarium, and you also want to keep them in tropical water parameters, just because they can be a little bit fickle to any other sort of colder temperatures and more acidic waters. So they are definitely one of the more peaceful fish on this list, although they do get quite large, anywhere from 30 centimeters upwards, depending on what species you get. So the most common species that you can get in the hobby are the long-nosed whiptails and the royal whiptails, both of which do the same job, and they both eat small amounts of algae here and there. But yeah, I definitely think if you have a large enough aquarium, these guys can make another great addition as an algae eater. Okay, so moving on to the final fish on this list, I have one that I think is going to come as no surprise to anybody. We have bristlenose catfish. So bristlenose catfish are one of the most popular algae-eating fish that you can get. They're especially popular amongst beginners just because they are generally sold as a cleaner fish. So these guys will only really eat your surface algae, and they won't really eat stuff like blackbeard or hair algae. But they will definitely do a tremendous job at keeping your surface algae down, and as long as you trim it back every now and then, you should find that these guys can keep it maintained for quite a while. So it is definitely important to keep them with a various diet. So feeding them things like zucchini, green beans, and algae wafers are all very good to supplement their diet with. As well as that, you do want to keep them in a heated aquarium. It doesn't really matter with the water parameters. Obviously, you're trying to aim for a tropical water parameters just because they are an Amazonian fish. But they are one of the most hardy fish that you can get, and they don't really mind small to large fluctuations in their water. So as well as that, they can withstand a variety of different tank mates just because they are an armored catfish, which means they can take quite a beating. And they also are very peaceful fish, so you can keep them with obviously, like I said before, a wide variety of different species. So if you are looking for a medium-sized, very peaceful little algae-eating fish, I would highly recommend bristlenose catfish. But with that being said, that is going to bring us to the end of today's video. So I hope you all enjoyed, and I hope I helped you guys find a brand new algae-eating fish for your aquarium. If you haven't already and you enjoyed this video, please make sure to go down and subscribe. And while you're down there, comment your thoughts on today's video. I always love going through and reading them all, and I try to reply to as many as I can. But yeah, with that being said, I hope you all enjoyed, and I'll see you all in that next video.